Hi, in this MuseumIndex Plus How To video, I'm going to show you how to use procedure records to record additional information about the objects in your collection. So if we go back and we look at some of our collection records, we can obviously record fairly standard spectrum metadata about our objects on the left here. We can record production information, description about information about the description, dimensions, and history of our objects, for example. But certain pieces of information, so for example, say the acquisition method, or say the borrower for a loan, these things are recorded in procedure records. So if we look at the list of procedures on the left here, oops, that's the wrong panel, on the left here, then you can see we have a whole list of spectrum procedures available in the system. And if we look at something like, let's have a look at an acquisition procedure. Let's see if I can find an example where we've got several records in the same acquisition. So like this, for example. What we have is a record describing the acquisition on the 1st of January 1923 and the fact that it was a gift. And we record that in one place here, and then we attach this procedure to the three objects that that came in for that acquisition. So I can click on one of these. These are my three objects, each describing album pages in this instance, and they're all linked, as we can see over here on the Journal tab, to the same acquisition record. And let's just click there to go back to the acquisition record. And that's quite important. That allows you all the information about the acquisition, the justification, terms and conditions, the source of the acquisition, the method, all this information. You only have to record that once, whether it's an acquisition of a single record, a single object, or tens or even hundreds of objects in a single acquisition. So let's go back and look at typical object record, and I'll show you how you would go about entering that sort of information. I'm going to do two examples in this how-to video. I'm going to show you how to put an acquisition source in, and I'll also show you how to put the borrower for a loan in. They follow basically the same model. So this record, we don't have any acquisition information in here yet. So if I wanted to record that this was a gift, what I would do is I would click here to add a new procedure, and I'm going to add an acquisition. And what that does is that creates me a new acquisition procedure. Every procedure has some basic information, a title, a start and an end date, and you can also group various procedures under the kind of the auspices of a project. You might do several procedures for the purposes of a particular project that's running at the museum. I'm going to ignore those for now and just go to the second tab here, second section, which is the information specific to the acquisition. So I could record here, I could record an acquisition date, and let's just keep it simple, an acquisition method. So I'll say it's today and it's a gift. And we'll say that the source of the acquisition was, let's say this was a donation from Alec Turner. And now if I save that record, what I have is one acquisition record describing my acquisition information, and that's linked to the object I was looking at. And similarly, when I'm looking at this object and I want to know about its acquisition information, I find that in the journal, along with information about loans and exhibitions and other things. So I click here, and there's information about the acquisition of that object. I'll do one other quick example. Acquisition, in this instance, the object was already catalogued, and then if you like, I retrospectively added the acquisition information. Probably more typically with acquisitions, what would happen is you'd record the information about the acquisition first, perhaps. I guess this is even more true for object entry. and then you'd record the information about the objects after that. So we can do that as well. What I can do, let's go back to the home screen to start this. So I could start a new procedure and run an acquisition. Again, we're back on the acquisition procedure. Let's just fill in, again, let's do today's date for the accession and acquisition of this object. Let's say that this was another gift. We'll just keep it simple again, and again, we'll say that this was a gift from Alec Turner. So there's the record about my acquisition, and then what I want to do is add the items describing the object or objects that were acquired. So I can click here, and what I'm going to do is pick Create New Item. So rather than linking to an existing record that I've already entered into my database, I'm creating a new record. So this is my first object, and we'll say it's the ceramics department. Let's just give it a fake museum number. So let's say that it's C1 2014. And this is a cup. So there's my acquisition. It's now linked to my cup. Go and look at the cup there. Go back to the acquisition record and I can add another item. So we'll create another new item. Again, ceramics. And this can be C2 2014, and that's the saucer. Okay, so there's my acquisition, and I now have two records linked to that. I should mention actually that for the purposes of things like acquisitions where you're creating new records to go with a procedure that you've created, the system actually remembers which procedure you're currently dealing with. You can access that via this button here, the procedures button, or by this link on the menu. You can see it's got there's my current acquisition record. The reason it remembers it, the other thing that can be quite useful, if we have a look at the saucer here, I could actually clone this record, so I can create a new record by cloning this saucer, and then basically it's duplicated all the information, and I can just change its museum number. And now I've got two sources. And you can see when I finish creating this new record, because it remembers that I'm currently working on an acquisition procedure, it gives me the option to include this new record in that procedure. So I can just say yes to that. And now if we look back at the acquisition, there's now 3 objects associated with my acquisition. And I could keep doing that. I could keep cloning or creating new records. And each time it would say, do you want to add it to the current procedure? When you finish with that current procedure, if that becomes annoying, you move on to something else and it's still talking about this acquisition that you're sort of not interested in anymore, you can just bring up the procedures, pop up here, and you can just clear the active procedure by clicking on this link here. Okay, so that's a quick look at acquisitions and how you can link an acquisition to a pre-existing object, or you can create an acquisition and then create the objects to go with it. I'm just going to go back and look at, let's go back to one of those records I was looking at previously. Actually, probably not that one. Sorry, bear with me. There we go. I think it was this search here. Yeah, okay, so suppose, as another example, this guitar, which already has an acquisition record and an object entry record and a condition procedure associated with it as well. Suppose I was now going to loan this guitar to another institution, so I wanted to record the borrower information. Now again, that information is held in a procedure record. the loan record might cover, a whole group of objects that are being loaned to a museum in a single, as part of a single project, for example. So what I do is I add a new procedure. I'm going to add a loan out procedure. As with acquisition, that creates me a procedure record, in this case a loan out procedure record. I've got that group of fields common to all procedures, so I can give my procedure a title and a start and end date, put it under the heading of a project if I wanted to. And again, the interesting information is in the second section here. This time, this information is specific to a loan. So I'm going to loan this object. I'll loan it to myself again. So it's our Turner. And we could also add, let's say that we wanted to add some terms and conditions. Maybe it's just for a research project and we don't want the object on general display. Maybe there's a reference number to go with the loan. And then I just save that. And now what we have is a loan out procedure record with our loan information associated with my object record. And I can click on that, look at the object record. And now if I go to the journal of the object record, I can see, if I click here, I can see the loan out information that goes with that object. Let's go back to my object. I can also see, for example, the acquisition information that goes with that object, the condition information, and so on and so on. And I think that basically concludes how to use procedure records to record additional information about the objects in your collection. Thank you.